Good morning, everyone. Today is episode number 26, and today we're going to talk about cyber warfare. It's actually one of the interesting topics. You got war games and all that. I think it was in the 1980s. Matthew Broderick had that movie, War Games.
Yeah, exactly. Ronald Reagan, of all people, got a lot of inspiration. He was one of the few public officials in the United States that he saw that movie and the lights came on and he thought, okay, wait a minute, now this is interesting, you know.
This might be a possibility, right?
Right. And I think he initially got the impetus started here in the United States as far as whether or not this was possible and what could we do to counter such an attack.
Well, I think what happens is, and this is, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we see things in the movies. Right, these attacks, but what happens is behind closed doors, behind reality, these things are actually either one happening or evolving to the possibility of it happening. Like you watch movies like Mission Impossible, and you watch like even movies like Star Trek, where they're pulling out this
communicator or something.
Yeah, and it flips open and they can communicate.
The Motorola StarTech.
Exactly. And then they have these, little display things that they walk around with and they can control stuff. Well, now we have iPads and, in these consoles. So I think what happens is the warfare that we're starting to see in the cyber space is we're starting to see it actually become reality. It's not this, illusion where you see in the movies. There actually are happening. We've talked about previous attacks on power plants, hospitals, you name it. So cyber warfare is out there. And what's your thoughts about cyber warfare? Is it something that it's reality, something we should be concerned about, something we should educate ourselves about? What do you think, Monty?
No, it's definitely a reality. And as a matter of fact, countries are like people when it comes to cyber attacks in general. Right. They have profiles, okay? Some people are more conservative, some are more juvenile and juvenile delinquents or whatever. Some are more conservative, liberal, or whatever. But it seems like in the cyber war space, when you analyze an attack, for instance, you can typically look at the attack and you'll probably get a very good idea in terms of what country may or may not be behind the attack, because of the individual profiles. What is the agenda behind this attack? Right. And the Sony attack, for instance, it wasn't really financially motivated at all, right? Mm-hmm. Someone wanted to make a statement. Right.
So more activists.
Activists, exactly. Who would be interested in an activist attack? Right. With the Stuxnet malware on the Iranian centrifuges. Mm-hmm. That wasn't financially motivated. That was somebody was making a statement saying maybe you should slow down your nuclear proliferation. I can't get the word out now. You should slow down your nuclear program, right? In Iran. And it depends. So I think it's a very real thing, definitely, and we can almost gauge who's behind it by the nature of the profile of the attack itself.
So let's first talk about, so everyone's on the same page, kind of what a definition, I'm going to say a global definition is right now. We're going to break down that definition because it's not really what I see as cyber warfare in this day and age in 2016. But cyber warfare is an internet-based conflict involving political, now remember they say political here, motivated attacks and information on information systems. Cyberware attacks can disable official websites and networks, disrupt and disable essential services, steal or alter classified information, and cripple financial systems, among many other possibilities. Now, I pointed out that politically motivated, because again, like we talked about, it could be activists. It doesn't have to be politically that it's
not at all
government against government, and because someone's a politician and someone did some sort of rights, or they're going to, passing a bill, then now, these hackers are coming out and they're trying to, take them out because it's a political statement. Sometimes there's activists, or they're just trying to show the lack of security concern.
Right? Oh yeah, that happens a lot, right?
And I've been watching a lot of like dark web and different hacker shows, and you hear them talk about, they hack for a reason. There's a political reason. It's not in the sense of, I'm just there. I'm just pissed off, and I'm gonna hack this company just for the sake of it. These guys plan on an attack because there's something that they find is not right. Something's not working. So we're talking about the Sony hack. They were hacking it just to show the vulnerabilities that Sony wasn't taking serious. And eventually what happened was they were like, okay, you're not going to listen to us? Here, we're going to show you.
Yeah. I think it didn't help at all when they showed the assassination of Kim Jong-il. That didn't go over very well in North Korea.
Right.
So not only was someone concerned about Sony not having more security protocols in place, but also there was an opportunity for a political statement.
Right.
In other words, in the United States, we put a great deal of emphasis on our on free speech here. The idea is to put out the movie first, or whatever form of entertainment or art. You put it out there first, and then you let people gauge it, right?
Right.
Because we're that open-minded, relatively speaking. I know some countries beg to differ, definitely.
Well, we all let's kind of go on this, and this is where CyberWarfare starts to really where you get the mindset. And let's talk about mindset, because what happens is CyberWarfare comes down to a mindset of an individual, a group, an organization that's not happy with something, right? And then now they're going to take action. So what happens is you're in the United States and you believe that you're right, you have a freedom of speech. But as we see watching the news, the freedom of speech isn't in a controlled environment. We'll look at it, for example, the news, CNN, Fox News. When you talk about freedom of speech, that's controlled media. It's censored to what they want us to know. So exactly. When people are doing, their, as they call it, rioting, but when they're doing protesting, at events, and they're peacefully protesting, you see them getting pepper sprayed, you see them getting arrested. So, and they're sitting there and they're peacefully protesting. Well, if you got freedom of speech, but then you're arresting them for protesting, doesn't really work out. And this is where you start to get the activists that now are like, you know what, I'm upset with the system. I'm going to take action. Right? I'm going to take action. And, if I'm not going to be able to take action in a public forum, I'm going to take action behind the scenes and get my message heard. And now we have this day and age where we have cybersecurity, cyber warfare, cyber attacks, where I can sit up my home, work with the community online and say, you know what, I'm not happy with this. What are we going to do? And they can take action. And they don't have to, set up a meeting and go somewhere, go to an event. They can do it online. Right? This is where this is where you get the cyber warfare, is that it's not a lot of times a government agency, right, sitting there and doing attacks at this moment. More of the attacks and things that we're hearing, right, is a community, a group of people, and then, I don't want to name any names.
Anonymous.
Right? Right, but there's a lot of these hacker communities out there that are saying enough's enough, right?
Yeah.
And they're taking action. Right? And no judgment here, but I can understand that there's two sides of this coin, right? There's a side that, companies, organizations, government are not taking action as seriously, and groups like Anonymous are coming up saying, look, you need to take this seriously. If you don't, here's the challenges that you're going to run into.
Estonia was a major cyber disruption because they had made a lot of progress putting everything online, only to have a situation, because according to what I understand, in Estonia, the country of Estonia, they once upon a time, I think the Russians ran the Germans out or something. And what happened was the people in Estonia and government offices decided they were going to remove this particular statue that commemorated this particular situation where the Russians ran out the Germans, I think it was. And a few people, immigrants that came to Estonia, grew up in Estonia and all that, were part of that revolution. They didn't take it so lightly when that monument, if you will, statue was taken away and put in who knows, a graveyard somewhere or something. But yeah, so certain individuals took it upon themselves to make a political statement,
Right.
and they caused major disruptions.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And
Banks went down. Newspapers were out of commission, and the country of Estonia actually had to go offline completely because they needed to recoup. They needed to figure out what was going on, and that was the first thing. You know, when you have a problem like that, you take everything down first and start analyzing and bring it back up slowly but surely.
Well, I was just looking up here, and I mean, just to kind of give people an idea of the 10 most notorious hacking communities.
Right.
There's an Anonymous, Lizard Squad, the Level 7 Crew, Chaos Computer Club, Lulz Security, which I actually just watched a documentary on them. Okay. And their Lulz is actually Laugh Out Loud Security. That's where it started.
Oh, really? Oh, really? I didn't know that.
That's where it's LOL Security, but they changed it to LULZ, right?
Oh, so that term, it came from that?
Yeah, it came basically from their laughing at the security system. So they were hacking like the FBI, the CIA, all different sites, just to show that the security that they had that were in the systems right now were a joke.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Syrian Electronic Army, Global Hell, Network Crack Program Hack Group, Terra Additina, which is another group. I'm just trying to look where they are. So there's a lot of different groups that are out there. The point what I'm trying to make is that even though we look at cyber warfare right now, each of these groups, there's new groups. It's something that you cannot stop, because every time you take one group and FBI, CIA, whatever wants to kind of infiltrate, study them, whatever that may be, a new group comes up. So my idea when it comes to cyber warfare is that they need to start to look at recruiting, understanding them, having meetings with them to be able to say, okay, what do you need us to do? Show us. Yes, we understand you're upset. Yes, we understand there's a frustration. Instead of sitting there and arresting them, right? Now start to kind of work with them, because you'll start to learn so much more of what is being the challenge, and you'll start more of a global community.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's almost like the war against Al Qaeda or something. If you have people who they're promoting some sort of ideology, what is the ideology that they're trying to promote? And in other words, if you have to get into the mindset of what am I trying to say, and once you figure out, you know, what kind of statement I'm trying to make and why, then you can start to address, you know, what are my motives behind this? In other words, if I feel disenfranchised in the United States, I don't feel like I'm a part of the system, whatever it is, my voice is not being heard, then obviously the next best thing is probably to get in front of a keyboard and do one of two things: start blogging or something, or start hacking into someone's database and see if I can cause some disruption. But I think more and more we need to figure out what is it that the hackers are. What do they have in common? Are they trying to make a statement? Are they trying to tell us something? And then maybe perhaps we can listen and be more inclusive in terms of offering these guys the opportunity to be a part of the system as compared to relegating them off to the side.
I feel when it comes to the activist side of it, not the criminal side where they're hacking and they're stealing credit card information, they're selling them on the dark web and things like that. But more, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. Like, that's more, you know, black hat hacking. People are trying to do it for malicious intent, right? But when we look at the groups and you look at the documentaries of, you know, Anonymous, Lulz, these types of communities, they're hacking for the intent of breaking down a system that's really not working. Right, and that's their intent right now, is to kind of show that this system is not working. You know, we're trying to show you that it's not working. We're talking to you. You're not listening, so now we're going to take action. And this is the scary part about it, is just like a child, and I'm not saying Anonymous is a child, but just like a child, if you don't listen, they act out, right? Because they have no other avenue to go. Yeah. Well, with our government and our you know, law enforcement agencies, they need to start looking at creating other forms, other measurements, because the level of escalation is, from my understanding, is that I sit there and I have a problem with the system. So now I go onto a forum, I search the websites or search online, and then I find other people that are complaining about the system. So what happens is now these guys are starting to escalate and escalate. Eventually you find a group that now is going to take action, right? And because we know, Monty, hacking in this day and age is not that hard.
No.
Right? Especially when security systems are this vulnerable. Networks are this vulnerable. It's so easy to socially engineer someone and to compromise a system now. It doesn't take that much skill. So we're not looking at these high-level programmers and encoders that are taking advantage of the system. We're finding script kiddies and people that can find information online very quickly that are able to compromise systems because they find vulnerabilities. Because, I mean, anyone watching this, do research on your own and see if you can find a device, find a server, and just look at vulnerability, how to compromise this device, and see how many listings come up in your search. That's what I'm saying. It's not that hard. Where now, since you have the internet, right, it's easier to find. Where before, you had to be smart. You had to be a coder. You had to have a high level of knowledge of the device, the system, whatever that may be, and how it works. But now you don't have to be able to compromise. I'm not saying you could or you shouldn't. I'm just saying that you don't need to.
No, there was some information published about there's a specific term called dorking, Google dorking.
Okay.
Where people were actually going online now, and Google dorking actually, according to what I understand, it has a lot to do with published information, manuals, etc., that are put on the internet by various companies in PDF form. For instance, you have operators manuals and such. And a lot of that information, legitimately served a good purpose at one time.
Right.
But like anything else, the internet has a good side and a bad side. So a lot of terrorist type people who want to do harm, they found out that they can go online and they can download and take a look at the manuals for some particular company, and they could actually find vulnerabilities, and as you mentioned, you don't have to be a rocket scientist anymore to do a whole lot of damage, because if I publish operators manuals, let me see, that didn't come out right. Try to put a link there for something. Let me see. But yeah, they can find operators manuals and actually get into these systems now, because you can go onto Google and you can get this information off of there.
Well, it's even worse than that. Like, I agree with you, they can do that, but it's even worse than that. The white papers of how to harden your system. So here's the complicated thing that me and you both have found. Right, and the challenge of this is the white papers out there telling people how to harden their system, how to secure it. So hardening means to secure your system.
Right.
So if you have a server, you have a router, you have a switch, you have a firewall, have some sort of application. A lot of the companies or security companies come out with white papers to tell you how to secure your system. Well, what happens is those white papers that are out there are public knowledge. Well, if a company doesn't do the base, hardening of that system, now there's a vulnerability. So these guys are finding companies, they're not even doing that. They're not even hardening their systems, where now there's open doors. And now we know this. If you update your device, if you have a software update, hardware update, firmware, whatever that may be, that update can potentially create an open door, right? Which now there's a vulnerability. Well, all we know is that we did this update, it's supposed to be more secure, but it might create a vulnerability. And then the company comes out a week, 2 weeks, a month later that there's another update to secure other areas that they found. And it's always this never-ending cycle. Well, if companies are not updating these systems, and we'll talk about companies, governments, law enforcement agencies, all those, if they're not doing that, it leaves open doors. Well, this is why cyber warfare is so it's on the rise, I'm going to call it, is because what happens is that such a race right now to keep up with the technology and the information to make sure that it's always secure, that companies can't or don't move as fast as they should. And this is where the hackers are saying, you got to change your system, right? They're saying, the activists are out there saying, first and foremost, you got to change your system. Second of all, we're not happy with what you're doing. And then you got to change your system too. So they're coming out and saying that. And when the companies are like, whatever, we're going to ignore them, they're like, okay, well, you're going to ignore me. I'm going to show you what's going to happen. Do I say it's right or wrong? I'm not going to judge. I mean, I'm not a judge or a law enforcement, but you can see if and success leaves clues, so does failures. If they keep being able to walk through and hack very easily, there's a problem, right? If you are able to harden your system and you have less hacks and less vulnerabilities, you're doing a great job. Success leaves clues. But if you're not doing that, the opposite side, it leaves clues that, there's vulnerabilities in these systems. And we talk about the internet, and this is where we got to kind of look at cyber warfare. We talk about the internet, and the definition of the internet is servers that are connected to each other over this long area or wide area of global connectivity. So when we have the internet, if one of those servers, one of those routers, one of those firewalls, one of those switches that are connected to the internet and connected and sharing information, sharing traffic, whatever that may be, is still vulnerable, that's an open door into the whole network, the whole internet. Right? And this is where we get cyber warfare, how people are walking through. Like you talked about Iran and the power plant, where they compromised the PCLs, right? They looked at the oldest device, what wasn't secure, wasn't updated, and they found an open door. They found a vulnerability, so they walked in. And they, from my understanding, what they did was they tricked it to show that all the gauges were running correctly, but they could actually slow it down, speed it up, and the gauges wouldn't show and the measurements wouldn't show any difference.
Yeah, exactly. The theme or the title of this blab being cyber warfare really requires that we talk about, nation to nation or state on state events, and going back into history, you really have to take a look at the most notable ones that we can think of. Probably, I think for instance, what comes to mind when you think about some of the original state-on-state cyber attacks?
Well, I'll say this: there's probably cyber attacks right now that are happening that we don't know about.
No, I mean some of the ones that we probably, when you look back and think, let me see. For instance, Stuxnet was a major problem, right?
Right.
Flame was one, for instance, where it was a number of people thought that the people who learned Stuxnet also they mimicked a lot of the coding and it came up with the Flame, and then there was what is it called? Maze something? M-A-Z-E. Yeah, Moonlight Maze. For you viewers and listeners out there, one of the original state-on-state hacks was called Moonlight Maze. That was supposedly originated out of Russia. And they actually used servers in London to infiltrate universities in the United States to gain access to military operations of the United States. And later on, it was finally traced back to Moscow. But it was very early on, 1996 at least. I think it occurred actually a few years before that, before they finally realized that it was how serious it is and everything in 1996, but it had been occurring a number of years before that. So yeah, when we look back and we look at Titan Rain, Moonlight Maze, and the Stuxnet and the Flames, these are state sponsored for the most part, and again, we always want to consider what type of profile does this cyber attack take on. China, in my opinion, you can chime in on yours and in your opinion, but China seems to be more commercial, and as far as I can tell, they want trade secrets. Hi, Stephanie. Misty Sky Cannon, and they want China wants intellectual property. They want to steal ideas for commercial reasons. Moscow, as far as I can tell, looks like they want to make a political statement, for instance, and then goes on from there. What do you think about some of those?
So I'm looking at it right now, kind of a historical timeline right now. So you got 1988 was the Morris worm, right? And then December 2006, NASA was forced to block emails with attachments. You got April 2007, espionage government networks were harassed by a denial of service attack. The U.S. Secretary of Defense in June 2007, China Ministry of State Security said that the foreign attackers in October 2007. Summer 2008, the database of the Republic of Democratic President campaigns were hacked.
Oh yeah,
August 2006. You got the computer networks in Georgia. What do you got here? 2009, Israel internet infrastructure during hackers attacked the Israel internet infrastructure, and then 2010, Iran cyber war. October 2010, where you talked about Stuxnet.
Exactly.
2011, Canadian government reported a major cyber attack against its agencies. 2011, a speech unveiled in the Department of Defense. 2012, the Russian firm Kaspersky discovered a worldwide cyber attack. Red October. What we got here? March 2013. South Korea financial institution, as well as the Korean broadcast YTN, had their networks infected. So you can kind of see, like, and as I'm going this historical view of everything, we're talking about, and this is the stuff that's only been publicized, right? This is what I'm saying. Like before was, we're hearing about the stuff that's in the mainstream media. But there's a lot of times there's stuff that doesn't get publicized.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of investigation, definitely. And it's a wonder that the system even holds itself together to the extent that it does, considering I was doing a little bit of research on one of the famous hackers of all time, Alberto Gonzalez. And he really brought to light, the idea that, if you have this significant talent and you want to do something with it, but you have no other way of expressing yourself again, right?
Right.
And so yeah, one of the first things you do if you have a computer in front of you and a little bit of savviness, as far as working on that computer, unfortunately, what you're going to do is you're going to get on there and you're going to probably like you mentioned, if you have a rather,
you're talking about coding. If you're a programmer,
sometimes you find vulnerabilities in networks and corporate databases, etc., and then you expose them right out of the kindness of your heart. But then there's the other people who say, look, I'm just going to go ahead and do some damage here because I want to make a name for myself. Right. So yeah, they have a lot of skill, a lot of talent, a lot of energy, but they need to do something with it. And as Albert Gonzalez talked about, he would looking back, he would rather have people listen to him and made him a part of the system, but he achieved a certain amount of notoriety doing hacking and compromising systems and gaining infamy that way. But he would rather use it in a positive manner. Right. So yeah, again, I think that strikes to the idea that we need to consider what are they doing and how to bring them in and get them out of poverty or something. and see whether or not we can help these individuals.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like these guys have a skill and a talent. And when we're looking at cyber warfare, most countries, other than the United States and I'll say North America, they take these hackers and they bring them into their system. They vent them out. They make sure that they're on board. That what, they don't even do it a fear state. This is what gets me. And I'm going to kind of go through the whole process here. They don't take them through a fear state. They tell them that they can work for the government agencies, the law enforcement agencies. They're very smart, intelligent people, and they make sure they vent them up to a point where, like, you have a choice. It's not the point where it's this or that. Where I find with the North American type mentality is we don't listen. We're not listening to them. They're telling us that something's going on. Then the hackers, take action. Then what happens is the law enforcement agents, the government agencies now look at them and now they threaten them. Well, if you don't do this, now you're gonna have to either work for us or you're gonna have to go for jail. Here's your choices. Yeah,
exactly. Right.
Why do that? Why not from the start listen to them? Say, okay, come on in, show us what you do, show us what what we need to do, help educate us, be a consultant, and then we'll work with you.
Well, let me ask you a question, because that really strikes at a dilemma that we have in the United States in particular. A lot of times, you do want to enlist the talents of these people. If you're a government agency, right? It's absolutely nothing wrong per se with putting them on the government payroll, right? I think in Estonia, for instance, when they had that major cyber attack, they wanted to enlist everyone that wanted to be a part of how to counter future threats. And they found out at the same time that was something more relegated to what you want to have in private industry. Because see, private industry, at least in the United States, they're the ones that are actually more capable of going out there and policing the internet and using their skills to make it secure, to make it run properly.
Right.
Government agencies really are not in the best position here to be the law enforcement people of the internet, because it's ultimately it's a commercial application almost, and you want to have people who got a vested interest in protecting their investment. And so the dilemma is this, should private industry really be where you have the ultimate talent pool, or should that be government where you may not have the financial incentive in terms of you working in government, making as much as you can work if you're employed by somebody like you or me and make money, get their financial incentive that way? Does that make a difference at all?
Well, hold on here. You've got members of parliament, you've got politicians. They're making millions of dollars.
Right.
Millions of dollars.
Right.
You've got, their contributions. We know there's money out there.
You mean to pay the people?
Oh, for sure.
Right.
We know. I work for the Ontario government. I know there's millions and millions of dollars spent in projects and all that. To pay someone that's qualified to help to secure your government agency, your law enforcement agency, and then help to educate the businesses around you that are hosting or maintaining the servers and the networks.
Right.
That's not, even if the company's invested into consultants that the government agencies now managed in, and this is where we have a problem with the management. I'll talk about that after, about having a government agent manage this.
Yeah.
But if the government agents did manage this and then helped train mid-sized, large corporations, small businesses, how to secure their networks and keep up to date and have a forum, a community that they can pull from, that would be so much better. And they're bringing the activists and the hackers inside to say, look, you can be part of this community, right, and help educate the business, and we will have an open forum that you can be open, you can discuss, we'll listen, we'll take action.
Well, let me put it this way. Hold that thought. Let me put it this way. Government agencies, as far as I can tell, they really don't do a very good job as far as analyzing the bottom line of having to implement security, having to keep it up and keep it working properly. In other words, if you don't do the things that you need to do with your company and your personal life, there's real immediate repercussions, right? Mm-hmm. But some government agency, on the other hand, they may not have that type of, they're not really compelled to act in a swift and timely manner because of the nature of the bureaucracy in the government agencies. That far as I can tell, and you have to see having that financial incentive that's going to say, look, you're going to be bankrupt if you don't do something about this problem, as compared to a government agency saying, like, oh, well, we're not going to be bankrupt. We're going to lose a lot of money, but it's taxpayers' money, and we're going to reshuffle some positions if the taxpayers get upset enough. But I'm not quite sure whether or not they have the same incentive to act quickly and do the things that are done in the private industry, if that makes any sense.
Well, this is what we're talking about. This is why I was saying the only problem is, and what I agree is that there's no one monitoring or managing the government, that agency.
Oh, okay, got it.
Because they're not held accountable.
Right.
So it's almost better to have, like you said, and what you're talking about, is have an outside party that has the influence from the government agencies and law enforcement, the backing, the support, but also is run by a separate party that can manage it, that can be audited, can be scrutinized.
Exactly. Right.
They can be held accountable, that they're not taking action, because we know this when it comes to North America. A lot of us don't hold our law enforcement agencies, our governments accountable because we can't. Because the laws are set up that way that if you do that, right, and you try to run those channels, either one, you're an activist and you get arrested, or two, and so much red tape to try to do it, you can't. And this is where the plain statement is this. The government is supposed to be for the people, by the people. Right?
Yeah.
And that has gone out the door for years and decades, that has not been an actual true statement. Right, because it's not for the people anymore. It's not by the people. It's by companies and for companies. Yeah, because those are investing. I do not get supported by my government. Right, I do not. Like, I'm the first one to say, yes, in Canada we're supposed to have free healthcare, but people don't realize this. We don't have free healthcare. We pay that through our taxes, and our taxes go up. I mean, we pay 13% tax on a lot of our goods and services.
Well, let me ask you a question. We determined a long time ago in the Blab that cyber warfare was a real situation, and it actually affects us and on various levels. Okay, we've confirmed that, hopefully by now. Yep. But I guess the real question now is, what is cyber warfare? In other words, if you attack me, right, and I'm a major corporation, or if I'm a government agency or something, what do you feel is my obligation? How do I determine, Brandon, whether or not I'm gonna fight back, should fight back? At what level do I determine, is it necessary to fight back or not? And, how do we know what the rules of the game are?
See, this is where we get the problem, is that we have governments, we have law enforcement, we have all these laws in place. Cybersecurity laws are still trying to be figured out. So let's talk about this. I'm a hacker in this scenario. You're a company. You're Monty Incorporated. Right? I'm not happy how you run your business. I'm not happy because, you know what, you do cruelty to animals.
Yes.
You club unicorns.
Right.
All this crazy stuff.
What's a unicorn? What did I do?
You club unicorns.
Oh, club them.
Yeah, club them with a bat.
Oh, that you're implying that I take them out the clubs where they can enjoy themselves.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Hey, that could be a problem too, because unicorns don't drink, and you're making them drink underage. Whatever that may be, right?
That's another issue. How do you know when they're drunk? Okay, go ahead.
But going back on that.
All right.
What we do is that now, because I'm not happy, I take action against you.
Right. Yeah.
So now I'm breaking in the cybersecurity rules and regulations and laws. I'm breaking the law because now I am doing something cybersecurity that's breaching your company, doing something illegal, penetrating your system without your authorization.
Right.
I'm doing that. So now I'm doing something illegal. Now you can't take action, retaliate.
I can.
Cannot. You cannot take action back on me, because what happens is now you're breaking the law. So what happens is,
but
now
you're trying to put me out of business.
Well, here's the thing. This is what we're talking about legalities, right? What happens is I'm now doing something illegal, and then you as a corporation or company now have to go through forensics, investigation. You have to make sure you track everything. You have to protect your systems. You might even have to take your systems down in the meantime to make sure that there's no other breaches or vulnerability. You have to do that. So that, yes, Monty Incorporated now is on the defense, and it has to do that. If you take the offense, now you become a black hat hacker, and you're doing something illegal. So, so what happens is, as we know, is this in the system where you have cyber warfare, we as individuals, as corporations, as companies, can't retaliate. We can't take action. Now, don't get me wrong, where you're a law enforcement agent, you're a government agencies, there's a different rule and regulation there. If someone attacks them, they do, of course, the forensics and the analysts, and they make sure but they can also take action at that point in time to stop that attack.
Okay,
right?
then now let me stop you right there, because there's a little known country by the name of China, right? And they've been very effective at compromising major databases and stealing major intellectual property from another little known country called the United States, right? And a lot of people here have done forensics, and they've done analysis, and they've done a lot of investigative work, and they've determined definitely that a lot of this points to China, right? What do we do? What are the rules when we know who the adversaries are, and we want to go after them because we got real damages here? We've done all the footwork and everything, and it seems to be pointed right there, and we're trying to find out, what do we do?
This is where we've got that challenge. What happens? The cybersecurity laws now. So here's where we're governed by our government and our law enforcement agencies.
Right.
Because that's why I was drawing out those two scenarios. Because as soon as you break the law, now you're a criminal. Even if you're a company, right? And a business in protection. And this is something that it's great that we're having this discussion, because some people are like, screw that. I'm going to take action. I'm going to hire some hackers, and I'm going to go back after China. Well, now you're an accessory to a crime. Oh, okay. So what happens is, we can't take action. We have to file a report with the police agent, FBI, NSA, CIA, with those guys, and they're supposed to take action, do an investigation, and hopefully come through. Now, we know this at this point when it comes to cyber laws and cyber warfare. We know at this point in time that, give me a second here.
Yeah.
We know at this point in time that there is no international law.
That was probably China calling to tell you.
Well, because I'm talking now. They're saying, okay, shut up, enough.
Yeah, exactly. Before we hack into your phone again or something.
Yeah. But we know right now there's no international laws. There's no global laws that if this country does this, then we can have some sort of legal action, that there can be a financial legal action to take them, or even just criminal. Right now, we don't have those global laws in place, because if you're in Russia and you hack, the United States, good luck. Good luck trying to find them and indict them and bring them over here.
Now, do you think that we're kind of like being hypocritical? Because according to what I understand, it's very fundamental to most nations to spy on each other. And we have a saying in the United States, is the pot calling the kettle black,
right?
Because we typically want traits. We want to know what the adversaries are doing. So we bug them, and they bug us, and we steal from them, and they steal from us. So how do you have honor among thieves? I think is the major issue here, Well,
let's kind of look at the levels here. You've got government and law enforcement that are playing these games, right? Spy warfare, right?
Using my taxpayer dollars to pretend like they're, innocent victims, when I don't know if they are, from the United States perspective. I don't know if we are innocent victims all the time.
Right. But these guys are doing, espionage, looking for information, kind of military intelligence, collecting of data. They're doing all that at that level. But then what happens when you get down to the hacker level and the general community? Yes, we're creating compromises, vulnerabilities. We're sniffing. We're looking at different information that's being tracked over. You've got the same thing when you look at companies. Companies are constantly tracking information. You look at geo-tracking, your data tracking, caching. They see which websites you go to. They see what time you go to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Your devices. So all this data is being tracked, right? Especially as we get more connected. I have that saying on my board. I've said it before. Software is hackable. Being connected is vulnerable, right? So knowing that we are more vulnerable to give away information and data is because we're more connected. Right? And that goes as a society as a whole. So when you're talking about cyber warfare, to be able to attack us is very simple. Right? You take out our communications. Look how many of us are connected to the internet, to phones, banks, whatever that may be. You take all the electronics, the communications out, we're dead in the water. Right? Because even look at the systems, airplanes, transport trucks, where it brings our food. A lot of ours are having food that is flown in, right? It's not locally grown anymore. It's very hard to find locally grown food. So a lot of it is imported into whatever country you're in. So if you shut down the technologies, the communication, now you shut down all this, importing and exporting. Well, now you destroy a country, right? You put a country down.
Oh, sure. Well, to make it even more complicated, a lot of our defense contractors are importing chips that go into our military hardware. Those chips and semiconductors, the fabrication plants, are actually located in China, right? So unfortunately, when you outsource a lot of the components that make up, for instance, the computer systems, guidance systems for our military equipment, and they're coming from these countries that are not so friendly to us, well, guess what? Now there's an opportunity to have embedded, backdoored technologies built into your product, right?
Well, it's even worse than that. And I'll bring up a point where you're saying Russia. I was watching a documentary on cyber warfare. Russia is actually so smart right now. They realize the United States and North America were going more digital and electronic in their systems, that they were more mechanical, because they can send out an EMP blast.
Oh, yeah.
That will shut down electronics. So what happens is if your pilots are fully connected to computers and systems, and they send an EMP blast, which is an electrical magnetic pulse, which shuts down electrical magnetic systems, if they send that into the air where the pilots are flying and shuts down the planes can't fly. So what happens is Russia is actually developing planes that have both.
Oh, really?
More mechanical, more just industrial mechanical systems and electronics. So what happens is the electronic systems get fried, the mechanical systems will still work, so they can still fly. Where we're going in North America, because we're being, evolution, we're being so innovative, we're going with all this technology. Well, we know just cyber warfare attack.
Well, let me throw this in there. That's a very good point that you're making. Is it because one notable expert brought up the idea that maybe we need to reevaluate what we're doing as far as, and when you talk about the Internet of Things and connectivity going to the point where, you connect it first and you think about the implications later, right? Should we take a pause and say, look, maybe everything doesn't need to be connected, at least at this point, and let's do some sort of analysis in terms of what needs to be connected right away, if ever, because as me and you talk about all the time, if you want to protect your computer, maybe you can have a thumb drive that has some information on it that's connected to the computer physically when you need it to be. Otherwise, you disconnect it, or maybe you have a separate computer that is never connected to the internet at all, or something. So I'm thinking maybe maybe the pendulum in North America has swung too far towards the direction of it has to be connected to the internet, it has to be networked, and maybe we should reevaluate what's connected and what's not connected, so that we don't have that type of problem. What do you think about that?
Or redundant systems. And this is what happens is when we're looking at innovation, right? We're looking at more streamlined, more connected, more technology, but we have to have redundant systems. And it has to be kind of a hybrid. We have a little mixture of both. I don't say there's nothing wrong with electronic systems, but if you can, it's easily, and this is where we're talking simple. I'm not talking about, this rocket science kind of technology that, oh my God, I just brought this up that no one's ever heard of that can disable electronic device. EMPs have been around for years and decades.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
And they know that, and it's not that hard to develop and not that hard to distribute. So if you know that as a military, a law enforcement agency, right, being able to do that, and you're going to create, your tanks, your planes, your machinery, your equipment, and that's going to be a case, you have to have a hybrid type of system where if one fails, then the other one will take over. Because think about that. You're a military, platoon, group, you're going to an area. You have your tanks, you have your planes, you have your choppers, you do all that.
Yeah.
And they just do an EMP pulse, and boom, they take everything out. Well, now all your soldiers are sitting ducks because all their devices don't work. Their guns don't work because they're all electronic. They have chips in it that make them do sighting and all that. Now
So I should probably make sure my toilet is not connected to the internet.
There you go.
Ever.
Or
right?
or like the Big Bang, it could blow up on you.
Right. So that's a good reason why we should make sure we understand that certain things are going to be connected and certain things really don't have to be connected.
Exactly.
We have an interest, a customer profile that is very interested, for instance, in these pouches. Brandon, is kind of neat. We have a certain type of pouch, for instance, because we have a number of customers, right? They have the cell phones and the iPads and the PDAs, etc. And someone brought up a long time ago that, if I'm walking past you and I got this reader or something, I can literally extract information from a credit card or something from your wallet, right?
Right.
So we have a particular type of customer. Maybe they're a little bit paranoid or something. Some people may even call them tinfoil hat people who think every government agency is out to get them. But actually, it spawned an industry, a cottage industry in the United States, where you get these pouches, if you will, where you actually put your cell phone in there, you put your iPad, PDA in there, and for a limited amount of time, when it's in there, you don't worry so much about EMPs, at least at that point, for that short amount of time.
Right. So it's insulated.
Exactly. And I'm thinking maybe there's something to be said about what we're what we can do and what we're doing currently to prevent this from occurring, or at least protect our infrastructure from that type of attack.
So let's we've got 1 minute left, which is, we've covered a lot of great information. Talk to, on high levels about cybersecurity, cyber warfare, right, what governments have to do, what companies need to do, what, the activists and kind of a mindset of that. So Monty, in closing, what would you say, just in one sentence, one short kind of little burst, what would you say we need to do to start looking at protecting yourself from cyber warfare?
Well, I think this goes back to the mindset of people who wish to do harm. I don't know if we're reaching out enough to make sure that those young teens, the future Kevin Mitnicks, the Albert Hernandez types of people, Steve Wozniak, whatever, these people have a significant amount of talent and energy, and that energy needs to be funneled in the right direction. So I think we need to develop outreach programs that are more inclusive. What can you do to positively contribute and use these skills in a manner where they can actually benefit you, benefit society, keep you out of jail, keep you out of harm's way, or whatever. Right. So yeah, that's my major concern. Let's strike at the actual the character of the people. What is missing? What are they trying to say? And what can we do to reach them and talk to them and let them know that, look, instead of doing harm, maybe you can work with us. If you're Julian Assange, you don't like what the government is saying, maybe we should listen to you and try to figure out how to work with you.
Exactly. And I agree with you. Like I would say, kind of going along with your points, is that one, law enforcement agencies, global kind of law enforcement need to start working together to create this blanket approach when it comes to what's legal, what's not legal, how do we protect each other, how do we work together. And this goes for government agencies as well as law enforcement agencies and companies working on a global solution when it comes to cybersecurity, and listening to groups and activists that, like Anonymous, that are giving information freely, right? Setting up forums, setting up communities that you're not threatening them anymore. You're actually working with them to say, okay, what are you seeing? What do we need to do? Sit down with us and give us some knowledge and education, right? And help us stay up to date, because then what happens is, as we develop technology and work together, we're all staying secure, we're all staying safe, right? And not drawing these lines of boundaries.
So that's going to be our cyber literacy words for the day. Listen to the hacktivists, if I can figure out how to word that properly. So we want to listen to the hacktivists, I think. Let's do everything we can to reach down to those communities and see, again, what are we not communicating to these people? What statements are they making? Are they telling us that we're being oppressive in terms of the so-called freedom of speech that we have in the United States? Let's nip some of these things in the bud, because when PayPal was brought down by Anonymous because WikiLeaks was just merely trying to let us know about some things that were going on in the government structures, that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. But some idiot congressman, and this is me saying this, and the United States determined that it was easier to put in pressure on PayPal to close down those accounts. And then guess what happened? Every hacktivist now had an incentive to go to those payment service providers, the PayPals and whoever it was, and show how vulnerable those systems were.
Right.
We could have way before that. We could have said, "Wait a minute, what are these guys trying to do? Are they trying to help or hurt? And is this a public relations issue? Is this a situation where the United States is speaking with one voice, 3 voices, 4 voices, or something? We need to get all on the same page or something." So yeah, we need to, as you mentioned earlier, we need to step back from being so defensive about what we're trying to say and punish you for speaking out, as compared to, no, wait a minute, maybe we can have a dialogue with everybody at the table.
Exactly. Right. And that's what I'm saying, is that if we can do that, like you're saying, Monty, if we can stop back and go on the defense and go on more of a communal kind of work, okay, we see this, what do we need to do? Talk to us, let's go in an open forum. You're not going to be charged. There's no legality. Just tell us what you're thinking, what's going on.
Exactly.
Then also now you start open dialogue, and now you start to learn what's the challenges. Yes, it's going to take some time to do that, because like any relationship, both sides are really heated.
Oh, sure.
Right? But once you get to an open dialogue where they can talk, now you're going to learn so much more.
Yeah. I think Estonia probably had the problem that they had if they would have got some sort of idea in terms of how people really felt about that statue coming down, and then that way, the hackers in that country wouldn't have acted out. But there's so many situations where it's repeated over and over again, where you make these unilateral decisions first, and then then you have to do damage control afterwards, and the damages are going into the billions of dollars.
Oh,
the amount of money Citibank, Sony pays, all these guys are paying out. It's in the billions, and a lot of times it's irreparable damage. You can't take it back. You can't unwind it.
Well, and this is where we're finding, you and I, is that because security is evolving, and evolving on both sides, is one, we're trying to come up with newer systems and newer protocols, new ways of doing things. But on the other side is that the vulnerabilities are increasing. So it's always this chase to trying to keep up. So yeah, I think at the end, in that, because we're 6 minutes after, I think at the end, it comes to global communication, global contribution, and working together as a community. That will help to start to prevent security attacks, vulnerabilities, cyber warfare, and start to understand that we need to do more actions. What these intelligent activists, these guys that are hackers, that know the systems, have done their due diligence and
Oh, sure.
listen to them.
Listen to them. Yeah.
So
So listen to Brandon and talk to him about what it is that you're trying to communicate, and let's make sure that we're all have a position, a seat at the table, so we can figure out how to put less emphasis on building a moat around everything, as compared to let's work together, let's share skills, let's share talents, and let's make the internet a safe place again, as compared to how do we shut down this group, how do we shut down that type of speech, how do we censor that group or this other group or something.
So what are we going to talk about next week, Monty?
I don't know. Do you have any ideas in terms of anything that we haven't covered already? There's always something new to cover, but
well, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the realism of cybersecurity. Media versus actual real world scenarios.
Oh, okay. I like that. I think, just as a teaser, when it comes to propaganda and information warfare, I think is a very interesting segue into the next blab, because it's all about the information that I'm putting out there,
Right.
And if I can make you believe as a state or a country or some government or media company or something, then I may be able to influence your thoughts and actions.
Exactly.
So yeah, let's take a look at that and see how far we can go with that. And that's a little teaser, so you guys be ready. It's going to be interesting.
Awesome. Well, Monty, thank you so much again. I mean, we shared a lot of great information. Guys,
Right.
Don't forget to, subscribe to Monty. Make sure you follow him. Monty's been posting these up in Blab, the actual replay, so make sure you watch that. We're a little bit behind just because the system is a little bit slower at getting the videos out, but we'll get them out to you for every week. You can see them on the YouTube channel, as well as you can see them in Blab. Let us know if you have any questions about the show, anything that you guys want us to talk about. If not, I mean, you can always contact us on Twitter, on Blab. We're always around.
Right.
Awesome, Monty. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Okay. We appreciate it. You guys have fun and stay safe.